Japan is an island country in East Asia. It is in the northwest Pacific Ocean and is bordered on the west by the Sea of Japan, extending from the Sea of Okhotsk in the north toward the East China Sea, Philippine Sea, and Taiwan in the south. Japan is a part of the Ring of Fire and spans an archipelago of 14,125 islands, with the 5 main islands being Hokkaido, Honshu, which is the mainland, Shikoku, Kyushu, and Okinawa. Tokyo is the country's capital and largest city, followed by Yokohama, Osaka, Nagoya, Sapporo, Fukuoka, Kobe, and Kyoto. Humans have occupied Japan for tens of thousands of years ago, but Japan's recorded history begins only in the 1st century BCE, with mention in Chinese sources. Contact with China and Korea in the early centuries brought profound changes to Japan, including the Chinese writing system, Buddhism, and many artistic forms from the continent. The first steps at political unification of the country occurred in the late 4th and early 5th centuries CE under the Yamato court. A great civilization then developed first at Nara in the 8th century and then at Kyoto from the late 8th to the late 12th century. The 7 centuries thereafter were a period of domination by military rulers, culminating in near isolation from the outside world from the early 17th to the mid-19th century. Japan has over 125 million inhabitants and is the 11th most populous country in the world, as well as one of the most densely populated. About 3/4 of the country's terrain is mountainous, concentrating its highly urbanized population on narrow coastal plains. Japan is divided into 47 administrative prefectures and 8 traditional regions. The Greater Tokyo area is the most populous metropolitan area in the world. Japan has the world's highest life expectancy, although it is experiencing a population decline due to its very low birth rate. Japan has been inhabited since the Upper Paleolithic period, 30,000 BC. Between the 4th and 9th centuries, the kingdoms of Japan became unified under an emperor and the imperial court based in Heian-kyo. Beginning in the 12th century, political power was held by a series of military dictators, shogun, and feudal lords, daimyo, and enforced by a class of warrior nobility, samurai. After a century-long period of civil war, the country was reunified in 1603 under the Tokugawa shogunate, which enacted an isolationist foreign policy. In 1854, a United States fleet forced Japan to open trade to the West, which led to the end of the shogunate and the restoration of imperial power in 1868. In the Meiji period, the Empire of Japan adopted a Western-modeled constitution and pursued a program of industrialization and modernization. Amidst a rise in militarism and overseas colonization, Japan invaded China in 1937 and entered World War II as an Axis power in 1941. After suffering defeat in the Pacific War and 2 atomic bombings, Japan surrendered in 1945 and came under a 7-year Allied occupation, during which it adopted a new constitution. Under the 1947 constitution, Japan has maintained a unitary parliamentary constitutional monarchy with a bicameral legislature, the National Diet. Japan is a developed country and a great power, with one of the largest economies by nominal GDP. Japan has renounced its right to declare war, though it maintains a self-defense force that ranks as one of the world's strongest militaries. A global leader in the automotive, robotics, and electronics industries, the country has made significant contributions to science and technology and is one of the world's largest exporters and importers. It is part of multiple major international and intergovernmental institutions. Japan is a cultural superpower, as the culture of Japan is well known around the world, including its art, cuisine, film, music, and popular culture, which encompasses prominent manga, anime, and video game industries. Japan comprises 14,125 islands extending along the Pacific coast of Asia. It stretches over 3,000 kilometers northeast-southwest from the Sea of Okhotsk to the East China Sea. The country's 5 main islands from north to south are Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, Kyushu, and Okinawa. The Ryukyu Islands, which include Okinawa, are a chain to the south of Kyushu. The Nanpo Islands are south and east of the main islands of Japan. Together, they are often known as the Japanese archipelago. As of 2019, Japan's territory is 377,975 km². Japan has the 6th longest coastline in the world at 29,751 kilometers. Because of its far-flung outlying islands, Japan has the 8th largest exclusive economic zone in the world, covering 4,270,000 km². The Japanese archipelago is 67% forests and 14% agricultural. The primarily rugged and mountainous terrain is restricted for habitation. Thus, the habitable zones, mainly in the coastal areas, have very high population densities. Japan is the 40th most densely populated country, even without considering that local concentration. Honshu has the highest population density at 450 person turn 2 as of 2010, while Hokkaido has the lowest density of 64.5 person came in 2 as of 2016. As of 2014, approximately 0.5% of Japan's total area is reclaimed land. Lake Biwa is an ancient lake and the country's largest freshwater lake. Japan is substantially prone to earthquakes, tsunami, and volcanic eruptions because of its location along the Pacific Ring of Fire. It has the 17th highest natural disaster risk, as measured in the 2016 World Risk Index. Japan has 111 active volcanoes. Destructive earthquakes, often resulting in tsunami, occur several times each century. The 1923 Tokyo earthquake killed over 140,000 people. More recent major quakes are the 1995 Great Hanshin earthquake and the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, which triggered a large tsunami. Japan is a unitary state and constitutional monarchy in which the power of the emperor is limited to a ceremonial role. Executive power is instead wielded by the Prime Minister of Japan and his cabinet, whose sovereignty is vested in the Japanese people. Naruhito is the Emperor of Japan, having succeeded his father Akihito upon his accession to the chrysanthemum throne in 2019. Japan is divided into 47 prefectures, each overseen by an elected governor and legislature. A member state of the United Nations since 1956, Japan is one of the G4 countries seeking reform of the Security Council. Japan is a member of the G7, APEC, and the ASEAN Plus 3, and is a participant in the East Asia Summit. It is the world's 5th largest donor of official development assistance, donating us $9.2 billion in 2014. In 2021, Japan had the 4th largest diplomatic network in the world. Japan is the 2nd highest ranked Asian country in the 2022 Global Peace Index, after Singapore. It spent 1.1% of its total GDP on its defense budget in 2022 and maintained the 10th largest military budget in the world in 2022. The country's military is restricted by Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution, which renounces Japan's right to declare war or use military force in international disputes. The military is governed by the Ministry of Defense and primarily consists of the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force, the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, and the Japan Air Self-Defense Force. The deployment of troops to Iraq and Afghanistan marked the first overseas use of Japan's military since World War. The government of Japan has been making changes to its security policy, which included the establishment of the National Security Council, the adoption of the National Security Strategy, and the development of the National Defense Program Guidelines. In May 2014, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Japan wanted to shed the passiveness it has maintained since the end of World War II and take more responsibility for regional security. In December 2022, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida further confirmed this trend, instructing the government to increase spending by 65% until 2027. Recent tensions, particularly with North Korea and China, have reignited the debate over the status of the JSDF and its relation to Japanese society. The indigenous religion of Japan, Shinto, coexists with various sects of Buddhism, Christianity, and some ancient shamanistic practices, as well as a number of new religions that have emerged since the 19th century. Not one of the religions is dominant, and each is affected by the others. Thus, it is typical for one person or family to believe in several Shinto gods and at the same time belong to a Buddhist sect. Intense religious feelings are generally lacking, except among the adherents of some of the new religions. Japanese children usually do not receive formal religious training. On the other hand, many Japanese homes contain a Buddhist altar at which various rituals, some on a daily basis, commemorate deceased family members. 10 interesting facts about Japan. 1. It's good manners to slurp your noodles. Japan values good manners highly, but when it comes to chowing down on bowlfuls of noodles, there's only one way to eat noisily. Slurping is a sign of enjoyment and also cools down the noodles as you eat. Get your chopsticks in one hand and lean over your bowl. Bibs are sometimes provided for foreigners, but by the time you leave, you should be able to polish off a bowl in a white top and walk out spotless. 2. The traditional Christmas Eve meal is KFC. Plenty of Japanese people celebrate Christmas, but the festive fare isn't what you might expect. In Japan, it's traditional to head to your local KFC on Christmas Eve. An estimated 3.6 million Japanese feast on the KFC Christmas dinner, and hours of queuing and ordering weeks in advance is expected. Some say turkey and chicken wasn't widely available for the Christmas-curious Japanese, so Colonel Sanders stepped in to answer the demand. 3. Japan is not all about the cities. Japan's big-name stars are its densely populated cities, and it's not a country you'd think of as a scarcely populated mountain wilderness. However, around 70% of Japan is made up of forest and mountains that aren't suitable for farming or living in. There are over 100 active volcanoes, and its tallest mountain is the famed Mount Fuji, with its elevation of 3,776 feet. 4. There's a rabbit island in Japan. Japan is made up of nearly 7,000 islands. The little island of Okunoshima in the inland sea is best known for its curious big-eared population. The island was used to test chemical weapons during World War II, and it's said the test subjects roamed free after the war. Either way, the numbers flourished in a predator-free environment. Dogs and cats are banned from entering, and today Okunoshima is a popular spot for cuddle bunny tourists. 5. The number 4 is extremely unlucky. The number 4 is widely avoided in Japan since it sounds too similar to the Japanese word for death. Keep an eye out in Japan and you'll notice buildings don't have a 4th floor. Items are sold in sets of 3 or 5, and special care is taken to avoid encountering the number in daily life. 6. There's a bizarre naked festival. Japan is well known for its non-stop festivals, but Hadaka Matsuri must be one of the most bizarre. Thousands of Japanese men strip naked in public to secure a fortune-filled year, with the biggest Matsuri taking place in Okayama, where an estimated 9,000 men get down to their fundoshi. 7. Japanese trains are some of the most punctual in the world. The average delay of Japanese trains is 18 seconds. What makes them so punctual? Drivers are trained in ultra-realistic simulators and drive one train line only. Many don't even need a speedometer to know how fast they're going. Competition is also fierce between rail companies, so lagging behind won't do. They work hard to keep hold of Japan's huge numbers of train commuters, whatever it takes, even if it means building fancy department stores in the stations. 8. The Japanese love wacky flavors. Eel-flavored ice cream and green tea Kit Kats are just two of the weird and wonderful flavors you can come across in Japan. Kit Kats are the most popular confectionery. Kit Kat sounds similar to kitokatsu, a Japanese saying meaning good luck. You can try edamame, wasabi, and ginger ale flavored Kit Kats too. 9. Everyone has their own seal. In Japan, people don't have signatures, they have their own seal, known as hanko. The seal is typically your name, translated into kanji characters, and is made from silk or plant-based paste. Adults will often have 3 hankos, one for signing off letters and personal matters, a bank seal and an identity seal. They're not necessary for tourists, but foreigners living in Japan can have one handmade in small local shops. 10. Anti-ninja flaws are a thing. During the feudal period, wealthy Japanese lords built homes with deliberately squeaky floors, known as nightingale floors, as a defense measure against ninjas. The highly trained, legendary mercenaries of feudal Japan were so steeped in myth and folklore, they were said to be capable of walking on water, turning invisible and controlling natural elements. That's got to be motivation to put down some new flooring.